Mother Road, Backpan Street again. Navigator gone on the attack. Second time around. And J. Cunning come to rip it down worldwide right down to the ground. Hear me look and tell them now.
Check one, check two. Welcome to another week with myself, J. Cunning, right here on the Big Bad Call, London.com. Oh, we got a big show today. Big show today. Production House Records in the house. Double house, but we'll take that. Going to introduce him in a couple of minutes. Just going to kick off Obsessed 2, Pictures of Silence by the legendary Acen. Check one, check two. So, as promised, the legendary guys from Production House Records. Welcome. How you doing?
How you doing, Jay? You all right?
I'm very good, mate. Very good indeed. So, to my right, might be to your left if you're looking online, Floyd Dice, who was very heavily involved in the label, to say the very least, was house crew. Am I right with Acen?
There was lots of combinations, wasn't there?
We'll go into that.
Yeah.
And it's same. Introduce yourself. Sorry. It's Raymond. So he was. You were the MC for the house crew, guys.
He's an MC for the house crew at the moment.
Okay.
But back in the day, he was the guy driving all the records to the shops.
You've probably got a few stories then. All right. So and then in the middle we have Acen. Yeah. Big up yourself, mate. Pleasure to finally meet you.
The mystery Acen.
Not anymore.
No mystery, no more.
Yeah.
All right. So look, let's get started. So one of the big things for me for a production house was that obviously I think a lot of people know from kind of 91, huge part of the hardcore scene, and certainly continued that through like the kind of to the mid 90s, and providing some amazing jungle tracks as well. And that really was where I kind of thought most of you guys started was like kind of 91. But when I started doing a bit of research, I was like, oh my god, this label launched in like 87. So this has been, this is 31 years this year. I know that it's not continuous, but it has been 31 years since you started. So let's take it right back to the start. Let's when the conception of the label. What happened?
Well, I mean the label sort of pre-production house was so many sort of ideas based around the fact that we used to have a studio which was sort of commercial studio.
Yeah.
And it was rented out commercially.
Yeah.
And
this wasn't the one in Herbert Gardens.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
So I mean I say this a lot, but I literally live now about a 4-minute walk from there.
I remember you saying it to me. Yeah.
I'm on like one road down. And at the end, it's like the island. I don't know if it was the island before.
Yeah.
That's basically my local.
Yeah.
Buccaneer. That was what.
That's yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah. I mean, there was a studio running commercially for quite a while, but in amongst that, I mean, you had obviously Phil Fearon, who was pretty much a major artist at the time with Galaxy. Pre that, he was Candidate and High Tension and all those things.
Yeah.
So we were sort of always in and around music, what I mean? And it was one of the things that over time sort of merged into a sort of idea of a label. I mean, production has probably started before then. Yeah. Because there was an idea, and I can't remember. Don't quote me on the date, but this is like sort of mid 80s, I'd say.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of shelved, the whole idea.
Yeah.
Then it was sort of more soul stuff that was being put out.
Yeah.
Under the name. And then over time, a mixture of the dance scene changing, us lot going out clubbing and stuff.
Yeah.
Hearing all the new sounds and that. So from sort of...
Can you remember any of the kind of clubs that were quite influential?
Paradise Club.
Paradise, right? Yeah, in Islington.
That's basically where I became an MC.
Yeah.
But DMS was playing there, so it was a good sounding ground for the music that we were making, because he would obviously play the other artists, the house crew, Baby D. So we started, I'd say PNT 17, 18 would have been about the first sort of experimental music that was coming from people like Floyd. But they were experimenting with not necessarily the underground hardcore that we became known for. But so there were other different genres of music that they were playing with, and then so from say PNT 017, if you can imagine the amount of releases that we subsequently did over the 3.5-4 year period, and we were up to PNT nearly 80, 84, I think we came to. So we had quite a substantial amount of releases, which is more than any other label were able to manage. Yeah. But primarily we had workhorses like Floyd, Acen, Terry Jones, who's not here at the moment, but these guys were the DMS. You know what I mean? And there were DJ Solo. We had a brilliant network of individuals that used to come in. Although Floyd, Terry, subsequently Acen when he was there, these were like the core members of the production team.
So how did these all come together? Like, were you finding artists like kind of coming through, people sending dates or knocking on the door or going out to clubs and hearing stuff?
Yeah, we had an A&R system. Yeah,
my thing.
How you got involved. What was the process?
I don't know where to start. I mean, basically, I was just making. I was doing one of those B-Tech courses in Hammersmith where they had a Korg M1 and a 4-track and the first ever samplers that came out, like the W30.
Yeah.
And I just got thrown into that, and I just ended up picking up a second-hand W30, and then next minute making, sampling Rebel MC, Wickedest Sound, and Scientist, and all. I just getting into the the scene sort of quietly, and then before I knew it, a friend of a friend of a friend had got one of my tracks, which was Close Your Eyes, down onto cassette, and he was mates with Floyd, or he knew of Floyd and David, and next minute they called me down to this house, which was a bit suspect. But,
and in the area at the time, it's not quite the middle class gentrified place that it is now.
Yeah, so it's like we were going to this, record label, and it was like we turned up at this house. I was like, okay, and then next minute, there was a massive it was filled with a massive mixing desk, studio, fully kitted out, 2-track, the whole thing, and then. Cut a long story short, 2 weeks later I can't hear myself.
That's all right, I was just turning it down just so we don't get feedback. There we go.
2 weeks later, 2 weeks later?
Yeah, it was quite quick.
Yeah, I basically I had like shed loads of all my crates of records, shipped them down to One Herbert Gardens.
Yeah.
And then basically that was it. I lived there for about a week. Guarding my records from Terry and people like that, because he was always like digging into my crates.
Bit light fingered, was he? Yeah.
And then we had Close Your Eyes. The first sort of mix was done, and then we just moved on to the B side, which is the Vitamin E mix, and then after that, the remixes came out a little while after. I think in between I dabbled with a few Bob Brothers Grimm tunes and DMS and Ecstatic and a few things, and I'm not sure of the timeline, but Close Your Eyes,
it's a long time ago.
The Optic Confusion remixes with the classic Beatles samples stuff came out after that, and then Trip to the Moon followed.
We're going to get to that, because that's the story I want to dig deep into. That one, because I remember like I started buying records. Me and my mate started buying records probably 89, 90, we were listening to kind of Pirates. We were a little bit too young to kind of go out, and my first experience was like Stern's 91. So being able to hear the music that we were buying and listening to on pirate radio, then in a club, you were like, I mean, look, my head's standing up on it now. It's like, it's just, and it's like most music, when you hear it at a concert or a band playing in a little sweaty venue, when you hear it in that, but especially kind of dance music, I mean, it blew my mind. Insanely, and especially, I think the stuff that you were doing with kind of Close Your Eyes as well. There was and this is a point I kind of made with Production House. What I noticed that when I was doing that show a couple of months ago with all the Production House stuff, and it was my favourites, and there was plenty to choose from. A lot of the songs, were very kind of musical in their structure, and I might be getting a bit too deep, but there was quite a clear, the A&R process became quite clear when you start listening and experimenting with them. They all started off with kind of strings. There was an element and a movement up. It wasn't just, right, let's just chuck in the beats, then we'll check in the kick, then it's the drop. There was like individuality to a lot of these, and definitely that kind of Close Your Eyes fit in with that. And obviously with the Beatles sample, I mean, my mates and I were in a certain state of mind at that time, but it was like, what is going on? It's like proper little moment. But so like, just we're going to get to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to try and stay on a small road, but we can dive right off. So look, with Production House, so we'll take it back a little bit, kind of to the 87 kind of size, so where the kind of releases that you were doing, because I found that there was a remix from Adamski in there, and that was the first tune that I played. Like, how did that kind of come about?
Well, that was actually through the Freedom to Dance movement.
Yeah.
Because we had sort of just about making a little bit of a noise on the underground.
Yeah.
and it's just a combination of a few things that sort of just fell into place in that. And we were actually asked to do a track for the march and that, and that's how All We Want to Do Is Dance was born. And then from there, I don't know whether it was a contact to do with the dance skill or whatever, and he wanted to do a remix of it, or he was asked to do a remix of it, and he sort of done damage to it as well.
Because back then, like, you know, he was the man, you know.
Well, yeah. And you know, but he was quite a big part of the whole sort of dance movement as well. Yeah. And so, you know, for someone who, you know, is sort of come from that, had the ear to the ground and stuff, he didn't sort of like second guess it. He wanted to do a remix in that, and that's how all that was born.
I don't know if you've heard what he's been doing. I don't want to say lately, but it was about sort of 3 years ago I discovered that he was on SoundCloud, and he was doing this stuff called Waltz something or other, Waltz Step maybe, but he was doing dance music in a 3/3 time signature.
Oh wow.
Which was totally bonkers.
Wow.
You know, it's not like triplets, but it was like 3/3. So it was like 1 2 3 1 2.
Yeah.
And you know, I listened to the mix, I was like, this actually, and he did a DJ mixed all of his own stuff together, and it actually really worked. I mean, you know, amazing to think that, you know, that far into a career you can still be kind of innovative.
Yeah, but you could tell even in those days how sort of forward thinking that he was anyway. Do you know what I mean? He's one of those sort of real sort of like creative geniuses anyway. So, you know, it's kind of no surprise in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Because of how far forward he was thinking in those days. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So moving on to like the kind of early hardcore stuff. Like what would you consider? What was the kind of was there a defining moment where it switched more to that direction, or did it kind of ease more into that kind of style?
No, it actually even wasn't. It was probably more so from Brothers Grimm, yeah. Casanova. Casanova is probably more on that vibe, because that's pretty much, you know, when we were clubbing, we were going to like Heaven and you know, all the raves that are happening in London.
Rage.
All that. We were like regulars going to all of those. So it's kind of like that's almost like the sort of two worlds colliding. Yeah. Because that's like our soul side meeting the dance side. Yeah. And they sort of merged it at that point there, and from there, I'd say that is probably sort of like the defining moment as far as like us moving more into like the underground. Because it was acid that was happening around then.
There was a window of just where it was just bleak, where it was just like warp and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of pretty much where I entered. I was blown away by LFO, Warehouse, and all the kind of. I'm trying to think of all the tunes. I mean, like early Scientist, even when he sort of with the break beats that he was bringing in on. Yeah,
like the B and stuff like he was doing on Kicking.
Yeah, the Exorcist and the B were almost the first sort of tunes that I got. I felt like that's where the break I could relate to that a bit more. Whereas before that, it was kind of more sort of 4 to the 4, 808, kind of a lot of bleeps, a lot kind of very kind of early, similar to sort of Brothers Grimm. That sort, I can't remember the name of the tracks now. Sorry.
That one.
It's just coming out. But yeah, there was definitely a sort of window of just sort of pure sort of bleep house. That then they started to change up the rhythms a bit, and then introducing break beats, and then I felt like sort of 91. Sort of beyond sort of Prodigy, sort of Charlie onwards, it just blew up, didn't it?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, for me, that was one of the amazing things about kind of the sort of 91, 92 era was that there was no distinction between a 4/4 beat and a break beat. It was, you know, you played the music that fit and that you liked and worked, and you know, as that kind of evolved, you know, people got a bit, oh no, I play 4/4, oh no, I play, you know, whatever, and it's. But that was, you know, I still listen to a lot of kind of mixtapes from back in the day, and you know, there was one I can't remember, it was a Groove Rider one from a big event, and he dropped like a banging proper techno tune in there, and it's like, you know,
there's all the Belgian techno tunes as well.
Yeah, Joe Beltram,
big
RNS,
sort of 1990 throughout 91. Yeah, and I think that was all mixed in there as well in a lot of sets, and a lot of the sounds. I mean, that's where all the Dominator sounds came from for the early sort of breakbeat stuff that we're hearing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
amazing times, huh? Yeah. All right. So at this point, like, you know, who were the kind of the core artists that were forming that production house early hardcore sound?
Well,
Definitely the Brothers Grimm, but also Baby D.
Yeah.
The House Crew. I'd say they were like the core.
Yeah.
To begin with, and then we sort of started merging in the other artists like Acen, DMS.
Yeah.
In fact, DMS was there right from the start. Yeah.
Like Vengeance.
Yeah.
Was 91, wasn't it?
He was one of the main artists as well.
Was it?
Yeah, I think it's Exterminate.
So you don't ask me years.
I'm going to get Discogs soon.
Because I was almost into production house before I got onto the label.
Yeah.
It was just like I didn't even know back then what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And when I went down to see them, I was like, oh, right, that tune, the Exterminate tune.
Yeah.
It's like, and they were playing me tunes. I was like, oh my god, that was on Reactivate or like a compilation that I'd had a year before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was kind of a bit of a fan myself.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, and then next minute, Close Your Eyes came out and all that. But I think, yeah, David, me, you, Terry, Brothers Grimm, that was kind of pretty much the core, as far as I knew.
Yeah.
Later on, a few more people jumped on. I mean, I can't play solo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Solo and then
Static.
Oh yeah, Russell. What am I talking about? Russell, make a big shout out to Russell. Static.
Yeah, we didn't forget you, Russell. Big shouts, big shouts, big shouts.
I'm just going to say at this point, if you anyone listening, if you do want to drop a question for any of the guys in the comments, please do so. Go for it. Cool. Okay, so who's behind? Let's talk about the artists and who's behind them. So let's start with House Crew, because I know that probably sounds like maybe a slightly complicated story.
Well, it kind of is, because the House Crew actually started out more as the Production House Crew. It was like all the people that was involved with Production House at the time.
Yeah.
Was kind of involved with the House Crew, and that's why All We Want to Do Is Dance was kind of born, because I wasn't even involved in it at that stage.
Okay.
And it was one of those things that it made a little name out there, and because the music had been changing and stuff, and because I was getting more into like the hardcore stuff, I just said, well, look, let me take the name and actually make like something proper out of it. And then the House Crew sort of more or less became myself and Terry. But I mean, as far as like performing, it was myself and Terry.
Yeah.
But it was actually me and Acen that was making the tracks.
Okay.
For the House Crew. And
so a very family, broad orientated name that had plenty of people involved in it.
Yeah, you could say that, but I mean, it's funny as well, because I mean, me and Terry are like the main guys from the House Crew.
Yeah.
But we've actually never worked on a track together, which is really quite odd. I mean, the most we've done is like I've done a track for the House Crew and to get him to do a remix of it.
Yeah.
But it was actually me and Acen that really sort of hit it off as far as like production was concerned, and we were, it was almost like a steam train that you couldn't really kind of control. You know what I mean?
It's like a science workshop in the sampling. I mean, we were.
Oh, because you see you all in your lab coats, mixing up Fear Freeze.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I mean, there was also logistics as well, because I remember Close Your Eyes was doing the rounds, and then I'd finished sort of a couple of tracks, and that had to become Brothers Grimm, because it was kind of like I couldn't put out another record at the time. It would have killed off. There was a bit of legit. So sometimes people would make tunes, and you would just find a home for them. It wasn't like, and in a way, I mean, we're not sort of thinking sales or anything like that. We're just, listen to this sample, listen to this track. I'd finish off about 80% of a track, and then Floyd would jump in and then put in another 20%, or he would do 20% of a track, and I'd jump in for the rest of it. So, it was kind of like just an organic, just building up a sort of library of tracks, and almost sort of finding an act that would fulfill it, and sort of looking at it more like producers rather than me fronting the act.
I'm sure your accountant said very different things. For the PRS sheets, look guys, just stick to one person per track. Sorry, what I meant was the box of paper under the desk.
Yeah, exactly. That was more the truth.
Well, I suppose, that's quite indicative of that kind of era. You look at kind of Moving Shadow, and Rob Playford was basically the first 5-6 artists that were on there. Back then, it was clear that, to have to start a successful label, you had to have these variety of artists that were on there. People weren't as kind of brand hungry as they are now, where it's like, it's all got to be about me, and, everything that I do. I mean, I get that, if you had, 9 Acen releases out in a year, then you kind of lose a little bit of potentially impact on that.
Also, nobody knew where the scene was going, really. It was just big, and you were just sort of in it, and you can't really sort of see outside it until it sort of finishes, which I think was about 94, 93. It kind of changed, and then we transitioned into sort of more jungle, darkcore, and then the happy hardcore guys were doing their thing or whatever. So it was just a big organic process of just like, well, look, we're just making these tunes because we're in it, we're feeling it, this is what we like, and it took off in its own way. I don't know what the word is. I mean, it just without,
organic,
without any kind of, like you were saying, brand orientation or anything. I sort of almost didn't know whether it was going to be released half the time. Because of the samples. I enjoy taking those samples, and I knew that I wanted to put them in a tune. There's no way I was thinking that while I was making a tune. It was just like, I was just happy, go lucky sampling James Bond. And next minute I had Tryptamine Part 1, and I thought, well, I want to sample another bit James Bond. And that was going to be the B-side, but they said, no, this is Part 1, and this is that was them.
Okay, that's interesting,
So I'd made Part 1 and Part 2 as like, well, this is my A and B side. And they were like, no, that's 2 A sides. You've got to come up with 2 B sides now. And I was like, okay.
Which I'm glad they did, because Life and Crimes of a Roughneck is one of my favourite tunes. Massive. Love that.
I think that's one of my favourite tunes as well.
So let's go back to Tryptamine, because it obviously was a huge kind of game changer for the kind of hardcore scene. And when Part 1 came out, let's go back and like, what was kind of your initial approach? Did you have like an overall plan for how this tune was going to sound, or were you like, grab this bit, grab that bit, and just mix it all up and see how it goes?
No, I mean, I always set out to do something different on the dance floor. So I would be going out and I'd hear the tunes, and I'd hear a sort of almost like a formula in a lot of tunes. And I just did not want to go down that route. I wanted to hear something that would just stand out. So I mean, I'm inspired by lots of different music, and I just wanted to bring that into the mix, as it were, or in the production process as much as I could. And that was purely by sampling. That was just taking a different direction. Instead of sampling, I'd see other people sort of sampling hardcore records as well, like sampling riffs and sounds from just other hardcore records, and that kind of felt a bit too formulaic, whereas I wanted to go down to the charity shop and pick up a BBC Radiophonic Workshop record and James Bond, and that was where I was getting, that is what I wanted to see. I don't know, there wasn't really any planning. It was kind of like I just made what I liked at the time. And I mean, there was one point where I didn't really like Part 1, and I'd finished Part 1, and I was going to put that to the side because I already started working on Part 2 halfway through it, because that's where you're just finding your feet. Is this a tune, or is it, I don't know. And then I kind of just finished it, played it, and then I sort of thought, well, okay, forget about that one. Here's the one I like. And
so you kind of had you'd done Part 1 and 2 at the same time. Then they were kind of both finished and ready to go.
They were both running alongside each other, because they were kind of, it's just the process that creates a process for when you're just sort of starting a tune, you put it to the side for a bit and start another tune. And then you feel like you can do it better, or and then you. I mean,
That was kind of how we worked as well at Production House. As well as doing the A side, you'd be thinking about the B side pretty much at the same time. And that is kind of like a way we kind of got into working, and it seemed to work. You know what I mean? And mainly because we were having fun at doing it as well. So because you were sort of having fun, it didn't really sort of seem like a chore or really sort of hard to do. And I think it kind of shows in the tracks themselves. You know what I mean? Because it was, all those tracks were just made with no preconceptions or anything like that. It was just right, I've got this great sample. Yeah, great, that's fantastic. You know what I mean? And it's like, let's see what we can do with it. And it was just like kids in a toy shop. You know what I mean? It was literally like that. Especially like when we worked on stuff together as well. You know.
So would you guys kind of sometimes start with just a sample and build a tune around it? How would you get into a bit of a rhythm with how you approach making tunes?
I would say that it always started with some sort of hook, and I think that's lost today. I think even me trying to sort of produce today or sort of muck around with stuff, you end up, because you've got so much at your fingertips, you don't sort of necessarily think of a hook first. You're thinking, you sort of, it's melodies, bass lines, beats. But there's no, we all, ever since Close Your Eyes, I mean, that kind of style, it started off with the hook. It's like, right, I've got this hook.
Yeah.
Now we build the tune around the hook.
Which was incredibly helpful for like me listening to pirate radio, walking into a record shop and going, give me Close Your Eyes, and they're like, right, I know what that is, great. But like Baptised by Dove, Criminal Minds, walking into the shop and going, can I have that tune that goes Go With The Flow? I remember calling up radio stations going, yeah, can you have that Go With The Flow? And they're like, what tune's that? I'm like, come on, you know the one, Can't Beat the System, Go With The Flow, you must know it. Like, everyone's rinsing it. Nah, sorry, mate. I having that identifier, I certainly see how that was a good part to hook people in.
I mean, and the same with, I think, even House Crew with the theme and Keep the Fire Burning. Everything sort of had that hook.
Sorry, I see just a little bit.
And we'd pretty much build a tune, and I think that's, in a way, that helped you sort of center the tune and finish it. I mean, sometimes there'd be other hooks that come in. So even Close Your Eyes, or Trip to the Moon, I'd say, started off with those vocals in the beginning, but in a way the hook was the James Bond.
Yes.
Weirdly enough, it kind of that seemed to be what it was more famous for.
Which was, quite, I thought was quite late in a tune.
Yeah.
Because if you think, especially back in those days, DJs had 45-minute sets, bang, 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 and you were out. But that was one of those tunes where okay, I'm just going to wait for that James Bond bit, and then I'll come in afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess on one hand, we also wanted to make tunes that did take you on a bit of a journey as well.
Yeah.
They weren't sort of formulaic in the way that it was just like a 3-minute pop track or anything like that. It was more or less like, for the first minute, it was a build-up, and then it would take you to a different area, and then that sort of bridge or that break in the middle, the hands in the air bit or whatever, and then on the other side, you've got something fierce kind of just waiting,
Which I think is a bit like you were saying earlier. I think that part has also been lost. Everyone wants that. Within 30 seconds of that tune, it needs to be giving you everything that it's got. I mean, it's kind of indicative of as cultures and generations move on, we become more impatient. We want everything instantly. And so
True.
look at the double drop culture in drum and bass. That had a huge impact on the intros. You look at like Bad Company and those guys. They used to do like 1.5-minute long intros. That's kind of not unheard of now, because there's a lot more atmospheric ones, but getting to that point really quick is like the key thing. I remember when I first started dabbling with tunes many years ago, this guy I was working with said, look, you have your first break, then the drop, but you save everything for the second drop. Like, that's where it needs to change or twist or turn or do whatever it is, and that's where you give them the full, show all your cards at that point. But I think that's been lost quite a lot now. I mean, what you were saying kind of goes back, and I think you put it a little bit more articulately better than I did. Right. But like I say, how you described that with that tune is that I feel like that was very consistent, with production house.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, as a label, we didn't want to be just throwing out random tunes because as time moved on, you could see a lot of labels were throwing stuff out there. We had a quality control that made sure, if a track wasn't right, we'd send it back.
Yeah.
And then, have the guys work on it and maybe change it up. But I was fortunate because I was doing the street sale, so I was networking with all the shops.
Yeah.
And I was also going out with the guys. We were clubbing. So you can't put it down to just one thing. I think there were so many elements that we managed to bring to the table throughout all of the different people that were working for the label. So I guess all I can say is we were fortunate to be at that place at that time.
Yeah.
And then be able to exploit all the different areas, DJs, producers, sales, marketing, which all encompassed what I was doing on the road. So but the people you're selling and marketing to are the record shops,
Yeah.
who are also your competition.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it is. I mean, I think, if you're driving around in the van and, I mean, I experienced this, in sort of 95, 96. We bringing in a box of records, they're like, all right, I'll take 3. Oh, come on, mate, take 10. Like, I'm not coming back. I've got another 25 shops to go around and visit. So you're kind of like, you're competing for shelf space, it's physical stock. So I can see how he did, but I suppose that gets a bit easier as the reputation builds.
Well,
they start knocking on your door and going, give me 2 boxes.
For real.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to Trip to the Moon Part 2. So, sounds like you initially weren't that happy with Part 1, and Part 2 for you felt like that was the one. So I don't mean to put words in your mouth. That's terrible, isn't it? I feel like Jeremy Paxman. So you said the first one you did was really shit, and the second one,
Yeah.
I couldn't
Pretty much,
choose.
yeah.
I couldn't choose my favourite of any of the 3 of them. It's like my children. But Part 3 was definitely the best.
Well, part 3 was a bit of a sort of a backlash to the first 2 parts, because then a lot of people were saying, well, because it's all sample based,
Yeah.
and so part 3 I kind of wanted to show that I wanted to break. I guess rebel against the fact that I didn't want to put a big sample in there, so I just wanted to play it. I wanted to play an original piano part.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do something fresh.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Also, Trip to the Moon Part 3 wasn't meant to be Part 3. So the part 1 and 2, I felt
Sounds like you were bullied into this
Well, I mean, look,
trilogy of tunes.
at the end of the day, I'm not marketing the tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
I just made the tracks and then.
But do you know what? I've got to say this. But this is the amazing part of like a good A&R and a good record label. And I think again, we're not going to stop bashing what goes on now, but I think that is really missed now. You've got each area of people's understanding and skill set for whatever it may be. And like you say, like it's clear that for you guys, it wasn't a cash cow. You weren't looking to just make loads of money and run. It was about kind of making a mark on the scene and making your own mark on the scene. And so, it's really nice to kind of hear this kind of dynamic of how it all kind of came together. So sorry, go on, Karen.
What were we on, Part 2?
Part 2, Part 3, we'll throw them in.
Well, I mean, Part 2 had finished, and then the B-sides kind of followed pretty quickly after that. And again, they were a couple of tracks that were just sort of on the back burner as well. While and I guess when they were finished, they decided, okay, that goes to Part 1 and Part 2. Obsessed Remix was on Part 1. Obsessed Remix was on Part 2. Part 3, sorry.
Yeah.
Obsessed Part 1 was on Part... Yeah, I know. And
Right, Discogs, where are you?
And I worked with them as well.
But yeah, part 3 was a good few months later. It was after the summer. I remember it pretty clearly. I mean, July sort of was when Trip to the Moon Part 2 had come out, and then there was a sort of bit of a break, and then I'd sort of finished, I guess, Part 3. I just done it. It was just like that was my remix.
Yeah.
In a way.
And it was your stamp of saying,
yeah,
I can do this, and play this in line.
It was just, I think it was just the vibe that I was into at the time. I just wanted to make something a bit more melodic, I guess.
Yeah.
And kind of play something a bit more original.
And Balls Crazy, I mean, it was a big tune.
Yeah, I think I was satisfied with that mix. Pretty, but even Obsessed as well. It was a bit more experimental at the time as well, and for them.
But that's the ones. I mean, I listen back to those now, and you get those tunes that kind of a little bit kind of sort of, I don't want to say throw away. They were good. They served the purpose. But once the kind of 6 months, 12 months are gone, they don't really have a kind of place. But you listen to those, and again, the kind of sort of intricacies of them and how they all worked really kind of meant that they were just amazing tunes. And you listen to them now and the B-sides. I mean, the regulars of the show and listen to the last 3 shows I did, I've called it like the underground 92 stuff, but it's basically all the tunes that I've ignored over the last year that I haven't played because I went for the same kind of 200 tunes, forced myself to go and dig deep. So I got thousands of tunes from that era and found some like amazing stuff. Yeah. And most of them are kind of B-sides. So I wanted to kind of ask you about that. Like, Floyd, what was your kind of thought process on the A-side and B-side? Was it, right, A-side, that's my dance floor killer. B-side, that's where we can go a little bit kind of left field, but, we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm putting words in your mouth.
I wouldn't say there was necessarily a structure. It was just, it was more, I think what was key, a bit of like what Acen kind of knocked onto, is finding like possibly like a good sample, a good hook, or you know, in my case, a lot of the things I tried to create originally as well, or use old tracks that I had as well.
Yeah.
And it was more a case of making the tracks and then sort of deciding which is stronger, which should be A, which should be B. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For some tracks, it was quite easy to decide which was A and B. For some, it was actually really difficult.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, but then also, I suppose by having that difficulty as well, it kind of, in some ways, probably made Raymond's job a little bit easier, because we started to build this reputation of having like quality stuff. So you knew that, like, you know, it wasn't just an A side you were selling the B side. And when you went at Raven as well, I mean, even in some cases, DJs would literally play the A side, then the B side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back to back. You know what I mean? So because there was sort of good quality control, good quality of tracks and that, I'd say, you know, a lot of the things just, just really sort of clicked into place and sort of made their own sort of decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nice. All right. So when it came to kind of promoting the tunes out to the DJs, how are you kind of doing this? Will you guys go down the white label route and chuck a few white labels out there? Or were you kind of giving out DATs to like exclusive kind of DJs for them to cut? Because I suppose 92 people weren't really cutting dubs really back then.
Well, that was a good part of. I said that I was going to say that one of the good things about having the team that we had was you didn't necessarily need to have that promotional arm from an exterior perspective that would be sending DJs our productions.
Yeah.
The reputation the guys had managed to build from early on meant a lot, and you know the venues that we were playing in, Paradise Club, you know, mentioned quite Astoria, all those sort of places. The DJs, we knew them personally.
Yeah.
So we'd be handing them white labels that we, you know, were pressing white labels to promote the record before we put them out.
Yeah.
So, you know, by the end of 92, you know, House Crew, Acen, I was pre-selling 3,000-4,000 records before I put them out on the street, because we'd already have a system from the back catalogue.
Yeah.
You take the records out on SOR, and obviously because of the influence of the music and the status, we were able to get, you know, where you'd get 2-3 records in, and I'd get a box in.
Yeah.
2 boxes, and I'd be going back to the shop a few days later to refill it, because whoever had the record first was going to sell it first.
Yeah.
And we kept the wholesalers at bay within our region so that we could focus on our key shops, our key network, and all of that feedback I was able to bring back to Floyd, Acen, Terry, you know, DMS, because we'd all chill together as well. So, you know, understanding what everybody else was doing, as well as, you know, people were understanding what we were doing. I was playing stuff off cassette before it even reached, you know, a stage of vinyl.
That's dedication.
You know what I mean? But it's about promotion, isn't it? So, you know, making sure that, you know, we were ahead.
We were giving DATs out, weren't we? Like, they were sending DATs down to Steve Jackson and for exclusives, and Colin Favor and a few others down there. Like, also they go out to DJ Hype and people like that all the time. They were all regulars. David, DMS used to give out stuff to, you know, every time we finished the tune, we got a few test presses back, and he'd be out playing them and giving them out to whoever on the circuit. But yeah, I mean, dub plates were much sort of, they were a bit later down the line. I think, more sort of 95.
94, 94, 95.
Yeah.
And all right, fair enough. All right, so let's move on to kind of 93. You know, and this, you know, was historically known as when that kind of hardcore scene started to branch into 2 different areas. You had, well, kind of 3 really. You know, there was definitely the sort of kind of early jungle sound that was coming through, and this is where your Fabios, Groove Islands, Mickey Finns, Kenny Kens were kind of going down that route, and you had people that were still kind of pioneering, championing the kind of more sort of happier, uplifting sound. There's also, you know, people like kind of sort of Tango and Ratty that were kind of doing, I don't really know what people would call it. I always used to call it haunted hardcore, but it was that kind of more industrial techno influence stuff, very heavy on the breakbeats, but, you know, very that side. So there was the scene started to kind of split. Like, what were you guys thinking at that point? Did you not care? You just carry on playing, making music? How did it affect what you guys were doing at Production House?
I mean, we were definitely we definitely had an ear on the ground
Yeah.
as far as like, you know, where the music was going, and you'd kind of try to keep up with what was going on, but then also as well try and establish your own style as well. I'd say around that time, yeah, as you were kind of saying, you know, things moving sort of more towards the jungle and that, we were doing that as well. But during that time as well, we were touring as well.
Yeah.
So we was doing like a lot of stuff abroad, and
there was actually a great video that you guys had shared of like a sort of sound check setup in Toronto.
Oh, that was in Canada. Yeah, that was 93. Yeah. So in some ways we were as well as bringing the hardcore sound to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
We were also taking in the new sound that was sort of coming up, as far as like, you know, the jungle thing that was coming through as well. And, you know, we'd be in the studio dabbling and making stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, even, you know, well past 93, we still had our finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So we were, as well as moving with the time, and as well as the network and the you know the setup that we had, we were in a lot of ways probably quite ahead as well.
Well, I think, you know, if you look at kind of superhero and stuff like that, it was definitely kind of had an uplifting element, but there was definitely that kind of raw amen kind of reggae.
I remember the first time I dropped it a story, it got rewound 6 times.
Wow.
It was just like, it was really sort of a mad sort of situation to sort of be in. You think to yourself, all right, just play the record, just play it. They've stopped it again, all right. Play the record, you know what I mean?
We're never going to hear the end bit. That's my favourite bit.
Exactly, do you know what I mean? I was just thinking to myself, no one's going to hear the bloody record, do you know what I mean? They'll get bored by just hearing the intro all the time.
I've got to say I'm not a fan of rewinds. I get it.
Yeah,
you know, and there's a moment for it, but I've definitely, when it started getting like full on, I was like, oh, come on, you can't do this for every other tune. This
but that's a bit like when you go to reggae dances, or like, you know what I mean?
But that's, you know, culturally they're not kind of, you're not mixing tunes together in reggae, so it's a song and it's a sign of appreciation, but in a kind of, you know, dancing all of its kind of genres. I want in a nice consistent flow. I'm in the zone. I want to get in there.
Yeah.
Stop stopping the records.
Yeah. But I actually think blatantly from when, that's probably when the reggae element did really sort of come into like the jungle thing as well. I think it did sort of bring in some of those elements as well. Do you know what I mean? Because you'd go to dances and that, and you'd never hear a full tune. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because everyone would be just like licking the ceiling, and some place you go to, people were shooting through the ceiling and stuff like that as well. So yeah, so you had that sort of element that was sort of brought into it, where the rewind thing kind of did take over. I mean, like you said, I wasn't really a fan of it either, but you know,
it was what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I'm just going to scoot quickly through the Facebook and see if there's any questions. Lots of very nice comments. Love the history. No, I can't actually find the question. All right, fair enough. So for the kind of jungle side of stuff, like, you know, did you find that, you know, did some artists kind of sort of trail off and went into it? You know, what was the kind of ethos behind the label for releasing like tunes in that kind of change in that era?
No, we went with it. You know, we were releasing jungle stuff. We even had like the jungle compilations as well. So we were bringing on other artists from other labels as well. Yeah, so we definitely embraced it in that, and we were right. You know, I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to you know, even when people sort of quote you and sort of say, you know, you were sort of part of that whole, you know, creation of like a new music as well. Yeah. You know, it's quite a nice sort of feeling to sort of, you know that you were sort of part of something like that. And that's probably how we sort of viewed it back then as well. You know, it was more about just making them, creating, you know, and not necessarily about sort of the adoration at all. It was just, you know, being part of something that was doing all right. Yeah.
And you love doing.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about the kind of sort of live element, and especially like the kind of going around the world, because, you know, from me starting out raving in 91, you know, I never really read like any sort of DJ Mixmag kind of magazines, but I was aware, mainly because it didn't cover hardcore music. You know, my source of that music was basically 3 areas. You either listened to it on pirate, you either went to clubs, or you bought records. You know, that was it. You know, there was kind of a few fanzines and stuff.
Yeah.
and we were just talking about this earlier, you had no idea what the DJs looked like. I mean, I could spend the whole night with DJs walking past me and never known it.
Yeah.
But the one thing that, I was always quite surprised is that, how much of an impact that kind of hardcore sound from the early 90s had globally. So what was the kind of sort of first experience for you guys kind of taking this sound out of the UK?
Yeah, I mean, going to places like New York was pretty sort of massive. In fact, you can talk about that because you went with Terry, didn't you?
Didn't you come along? What do you mean? We went to Canada though after.
Yeah. But you went to New York.
All right, so I was in New York. Apparently Floyd wasn't there.
When was this?
This was the same time as the Canada gig in '93. So that was about a week after, wasn't it? We went to Toronto. Yeah. But going to, I mean, that blew me away, certainly. Going to, it was the Limehouse then, which I don't think is around
right,
anymore.
yeah.
But I mean, the crowd was just out. I mean, I'd not seen anything like it. It was like a scene out of Fame, but underground.
But a lot better music.
yeah. But hardcore. Yeah. I mean,
a lot more white gloves.
Yeah. But people were like proper battling each other. Like, it wasn't like in the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was circles on the floor. I mean, when I was doing the gig, they were still battling as well. So I was just like, what you sort of wanted to go down there and see what's going on. But it was pretty mental. New York was just out. I mean, for me, it blew me away. It was out of this world.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Canada was sort of even better because that was such a huge rave and such a. Yeah. It was a good few days. We'd done a few radio, TV things as well. Yeah. That was when I just dropped Window in the Sky.
Love that
so
show.
it was kind of that. That was promoting that kind of stuff. I mean, then again, that was kind of pretty much when the jungle thing was kind of blowing up. I mean, see, to me, I feel like jungle was always around. There was always an element of it, even in hardcore. They'd sort of the Ibiza records that were the label that was out at the time, sort of 91 with all the different colours and
I mean Noise Factory and stuff that they were doing on sort of Third Party and those guys was definitely like a very early jungle sound.
For sure. So I felt like it was always there. It was just that it's sort of taking on its own sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but sort of around 93 it sort of grew into its own element. And with the 808 drums and stuff and the kind of like the snares and the sort of, maybe that was 94 as well, but yeah, I'd taken a different route myself then. I felt like I was trying to sort of get into album mode. After we'd done a lot of touring, you'd come back with a lot of inspiration and you kind of just wanted to sort of, I kind of went back into rebuilding the studio and getting on the album tip, and kind of Floyd was as well, but he was still releasing a few singles under Brothers Grimm and I think House Crew. Yeah. And then, I don't know if you want to take it from there.
Well, yeah.
Chronologically.
Do you know where it can be? Yeah. These things never go into one direction.
Exactly.
It's impossible. You're telling like a huge history. It will go all over the place.
No, but I definitely embraced the whole jungle thing as well. Loved making the music still in that way. But like Acen was saying, other things sort of started taking over as well because we were doing more touring and that.
Yeah.
Baby D was really kicking off by that time as well. So that really sort of took us to like another stratosphere as well. So as well as still trying to make the music as well, all of a sudden now we're abroad in Germany or somewhere like that, and we're having to sort of like satisfy other commitments, what I mean, as far as Baby D was concerned. So it definitely became a lot harder to keep on top, of all the music as it was,
So mentioning Baby D, obviously huge tune, Let Me Be Your Fantasy. You know, it was obviously quite a moment in history there. When you guys finished recording that, what was the kind of feeling?
Next. That is it. It was like that because we'd make tunes and it'd be like, right, like Acen sort of explained, as you're making one track, you'd already be sort of like laying down ideas for something else.
Yeah.
So you'd be like sort of in a rush to get rid of one so you can get on to the next one. So it was literally like that. It was almost a bit like next, and let's get on to the next one, and let's
because when it first came out, I didn't think much of the tune myself. And then after sort of a while hearing it out there, it started to really just, it got more dense. People were starting to really, and then I think by the time it was re-released, wasn't it, on 93, 94 on London, and that went straight in at the top, didn't it? Because it had so much. Yeah, again, I'm lost for words, but it had so much kind of. But when I first heard it, because I was into just again samples at the time, and then he'd made this sort of what sounded like a love record.
Go on, Floyd. You're going soft, mate. What's going on?
Yeah. It's like I honestly didn't think. I just thought it was just another tune. It would just come. And I think it did. When it first came out, there wasn't much of a. Right on the first release.
There was an instant. It was instant.
Okay, well maybe I was just. I felt like it came back because it came back and that was it. That was its justification.
Because I actually remember because DMS was our in-house DJ as well.
Yeah.
And he dropped it at Paradise Club, and the place went nuts. It went absolutely nuts. But I know exactly what Acen is saying, because even like the guys at Production House, the guys who the Machine guys, Raj, Lawrence. I remember when I played it to them, they just sat there and gave me this blank look, as if to say, right, that's probably not quite what we've been doing.
Is it even close, guys? What are we doing? What are we doing?
But no, but I mean, even by that time as well, because of what we'd been doing, they trusted my ears anyway.
Right, okay, yeah.
And
because take the vocals away, it's still like a banging tune.
Yeah. It was
take
hard.
The piano and the vocals away. Yeah. Really like rough beat, amazing structure.
It was definitely hard. You know what I mean? But I probably got inspired by other tunes that I thought were doing a similar thing, because I mean, even like Liquid, Sweet Harmony.
Yeah.
That is. Shout to Eamon.
Yeah.
I mean, when you heard tracks like that, it was like it touched your soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was almost what I was trying to sort of do in my way, and also because I know I came from like the songwriting and the musicianship, and writing songs.
Yeah.
I thought, hold on a second, I can actually do that myself without sampling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, right, let's do a full-on vocal track, not just a sample but the whole damn lot. You know what I mean?
I mean that's and at that time as well, when sampling has always played a huge part in music, but especially at that time, that's phenomenal.
But it's strange as well, because even creating it as well, sampling was still in my head, because I was looking at the vocal as one long sample.
Yeah.
Because also I'd been used to sampling Dee's vocal anyway, because I sampled her Keep Fire Burning. I'd done a full vocal track with her with Daydreaming as well.
Yeah.
Daydreaming done a really big thing as well. Yeah.
So the Daydream, I think you'd done a mix of that, which I played in this show, and I don't think a lot of people had heard it. And it's, in all honesty, I don't think I had even found it until I started digging to find more tunes. Like again, just it still blows me away to this day that I'm still looking back in the era and finding tunes that I've never heard. You know.
Because I mean, that was another thing as well. Because even like when the track was released as well, I said to the guys to put an a cappella on the vinyl as well, so that people could sample it. You know what I mean? And then before you know it, you had reinforced sampling it. You know what I mean? And then other tracks that we'd done with vocals like Casanova and stuff as well. Then you had like Prodigy sampling.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They did a remix of it. In the end,
yeah.
That was the payment for taking the sample, huh?
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Yeah, but that was the thing. I mean, but sampling was still in mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was, we could take it that stage further. It's like, actually, we can create our own samples. And I did actually used to create my own sample, even like on the Superhero. I've sampled myself on Superhero as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
The bit that goes, must be some kind of superhero.
Yeah.
That's me.
Do you know what? I'm actually going to dig that out. There we go. All right. So we'll take a little couple of minutes break. So we've been chatting and stuff, Ray. So just listen out. It is Superhero My Night, and listen out for Must Be Some Kind. I'm glad you didn't get me to sample it. Right, you say. What does it say?
Must be some kind of superhero.
Thanks, man. Back after the adverts. So we're just going to go for a couple of questions we got on Facebook. So Mr. Andrew Mills, easy Andrew, thank you very much for your question. He asks, where's the most random place you've heard your music being played? Tough one, huh?
X Factor.
X Factor, really?
Yeah, Let Me Be Your Fantasy, being sung by someone.
That is... that is quite mad. Who's did they win?
No, they didn't win, but actually, it's been on there a couple of times. There was a young sort of mixed race girl that sung it, which was all right. But then there was this nutty guy. He done some refix or remix of it, which he blended in with another song and that, and it was just odd. It was totally odd, you know what I mean?
Was it one of those moments where you're like, I'm leaving the room, but I can't stop watching it?
kind of, yeah, kind of like that.
Acen, what about you? What's the most random place you've heard one of your tunes?
Well, there was one. I was on this Gumball Rally, like Gumball Rally 3000.
Yeah.
I was, and we was in like Eastern Europe, like Albania or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And it was like this sort of hotel bar type thing, and basically Close Your Eyes was playing in that when we walked in, which was totally...
Are you sure the owner saw you outside? You ready, play?
Otherwise places like Top Man, that's pretty random. In Oxford Circus. I don't know what he's, you know.
That is definitely that's two pretty random places. Basically, anywhere outside of a club or a radio pretty station, much, I think pretty much qualifies as random. Yeah. Raymond, what about you? What's the most random place you heard a production house tune?
You'll never believe this. I have a really good friend, Paminda. Paminda, big up. She works for the BBC, so she's she does a lot of broadcast.
Just squeeze in a little bit so we can see. I think you're getting hidden. There we go.
Sorry. So she works for BBC, so she does sort of outside broadcast. She was broadcasting the African Nations Cup.
Okay.
So she was in some location in Africa, and she sent me a Facebook video of her in this bar in the middle of some place in Africa, and they're playing "Let Me Be a Fantasy," and I just couldn't believe it. Just amazing. I don't think I've got anything that could top that. It's just some little backwater place, and they're playing "Let Me Be a Fantasy," and she's videoing it. Wow. I've got to get her to send me the copy.
I think the funny thing is because now I suppose they seem less random now, just because music's so accessible, and obviously Spotify and the internet and blah blah blah. It's easy to hear stuff, but I remember travelling to. I think it's one of the first gigs I did in Romania, like 2001 maybe. And I was in a car just listening to like what was their kind of equivalent of Kiss FM. And it wasn't it was a tune off my label. And I was like, I'm literally in a car in this like crappy little Yugo driving from like Bucharest to Budapest. And I was thinking that, this journey's never going to end. And all of a sudden this song comes on. It just gave me this whole new lease. I was like, I'm going to make this. I'm actually going to do this. It's an 8-hour drive and I'm going to make it. That's a sign. All right, cool. I think we got some other questions here. So Dan Bridgeland, thank you very much for your question, says, my question is, do they think production has got too technical on tunes now? Does the raw feel need to come back? I like that. Good question, mate.
That's a good question, actually. Yeah. In some ways, yeah, definitely. But then you also have to embrace change as well, I suppose. And you have to also embrace progress, I suppose, as well. But I definitely get where you're coming from. I mean, it's a conversation that myself and Acen have quite a lot insofar as, like, since the digital age, some of production has become a little bit sort of too anal.
Yeah. Too clinical.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably getting a little bit nicer now, because whereas before, when stuff was very, very digital, I mean, it used to do my face in anyway. But now, I mean, when you think of, like, this is sort of getting too technical now, but when you think of like plugins and software that you can buy for music making software and stuff now, a lot of them now have sort of embraced getting the analog sound in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as the sound is concerned, you know, we can sort of now at least sort of say, well, yeah, you know, the sound is probably nearer to what we was making back in the days and that. But then the techniques and how people get to the point of, you know, releasing tracks and stuff, it probably has got a little bit.
Just grab me that phone. I'm going to hang it up.
Yeah, it probably has got a little bit too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go on.
No,
Acen.
I'd say it suits certain types of music nowadays as well, like the sort of synth wave, new retro wave, where you can get all these old analog keyboards as plugins now, and people are kind of making that type of music. I don't know if you've heard any of that stuff.
I have, yeah. Don't ask me any follow-up questions.
No. I mean, no, but I mean, it's quite interesting where that's all gone. I mean, like even old '80s classics like Axel F. Sort of soundtracks and
first 7-inch you ever bought.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a big fan of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
So it's mad that they're sort of recreating that, and it almost sounds authentic because it's sort of in the digital world now. And
Well, it's a lot of people have talked about that kind of warmth of like valve compressors versus plugins. You know, you're just not kind of beating that warmth that you get from it. But it's this, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the whole, you know, vinyl is better than CD and digital and blah blah blah. And it's like, you know what? I don't really care. Good songs, and it just is replicated in a different fashion. You know, I still love vinyl, but I love digital. You know.
It happens with video as well, where people are still latching onto film versus video. They say video was made in hell and film was made in heaven.
But you know, the funny
digital.
thing with that is, you know, the stuff that does really well on socials is the stuff that's just kind of just someone has just captured a moment on the camera. It's not polished. There's no kind of After Effects on it. There's no, you know, studio quality mic, but they've captured a moment. And again, it's that kind of rawness. You know, I guess that goes back to his question. That's that. You know, just are we missing that kind of raw element?
I mean, I was taking it that he was referring to like old school hardcore and stuff like that. Is it a question that's referring to the whole of?
Yeah, come on, Dan. Be a bit clearer with your questions, please.
so I mean, my answer was sort of based on, you know, looking just at like, you know, what we were sort of doing around that sort of time.
I think it's a valid question either way. I think it'd be open to interpretation, but I think there's both like valid answers for sure.
I mean, I'd tell you, the equipment did make a big difference to our production style back then versus now.
Yeah.
You know, we were using 12-bit samplers that gave you that instant sort of crunch and sound, and you're putting it through quite a high level mixing desk, you know, DDA, which was it was about 30 grand mixing desk back then, which was like, you know, not many people had that at the finish.
Yeah.
And we were going on to tape. I mean, as far as up to Close Your Eyes, we were putting it onto 2-track tape. As far as I think a little bit after that, they then started going. Then they were going to that. So I mean, even that had a unique sound.
Yeah. Pushing
it up on tape to get that kind of sort of that lovely distortion, the harmonics that you get from that. But I mean, mostly it was the 12-bit samplers. I'd say that was the core of the heart of that kind of sound. That you could sample vinyl and sample from a keyboard or whatever, and it would take on its own kind of sound.
New dynamic with that process.
And then we'd have lots of outboard gear that we'd stuff it through and plug back in against the desk. But I think a lot of it was the equipment back then. It did simplify. You only had 28 seconds sampling time. And you'd have to speed up vinyl to get, you know, as many breakbeats as you could into the machine before it crashed.
I mean, it still blows me away, you know, from the production element to how dedicated you had to be to make music back then. You know, an old Atari ST, little crack copy of Cubase off your mate, no manual. Go figure it out, you know, and that pretty much was it.
Well, someone was actually saying to me as well, for the music that we were making, especially like during the hardcore jungle time, because of the actual equipment that we had, we actually shouldn't have been able to make the music that we did. You know, that goes for everyone within the scene.
Wow.
But it kind of shows you when you're limited what you can kind of do. Now, with the technology you have now, I mean, you could sample, you know, a long sample for hours, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The limitations are not kind of there now, and I don't know, maybe in some ways it does have a sort of a vibe as far as like how the music is nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there isn't that limitation. When you, as Acen says, when you've only got like that minuscule bit of sampling time, if you gave that to some now producers, they probably just get their bass drum in that, and that's it. They wouldn't be able to do much more. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose in one sense, that would really push you to get the most out of it, and you had to be extremely creative with how you picked your samples because there were technical limitations, in many roads that you met.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's, you want to sample 3 hours of something, then knock yourself out, go and do it.
Yeah.
Also, it was creative in the way that you'd have to loop stuff to keep sampling time down. So, sometimes you would sample a string chord from a Beethoven record or a soundtrack of something, and that would become a pad sound. And then you'd filter it, and it would literally be, half a second of that looped.
Yeah.
And then you smooth out the loop. And even the sub bass was ridiculous. That was just one note of, sometimes it was a bass drum, and we just looped that until you made a big heavy sub bass and put in. A lot of the early records had the sort of sub bass in sort of ragga sort of B lines played in a dub way over the tune. Nowadays you don't hear that so much because everyone's listening through laptops and not and you kind of don't hear the sub frequencies as much. Then again, I don't know. A lot of people are going back to hardware as well because there's a lot more keyboards, suites out there and stuff like that. That sequencers are going back to that.
And the modular thing, has been kicked off.
Totally.
For a few years now. You've seen some pretty impressive setups that people have.
Yeah. So I think it's getting better personally.
Yeah, but there was a good question from, I've forgotten the guy's name.
Dan. I don't know if we answered that, Dan, but thanks. That was a very thought-provoking question. Good work. So we have got a question from Rowan who says, and this is going to be one of my favourite questions, will there be any new production house releases? Say yes, please.
Not as production house, but maybe as us as artists, Yeah.
Okay. Any more details on that? Or
we're working on stuff.
Sure, we'll just agree as an exclusive on this show. Fine, we'll leave it there. No problem. Acen, what about you? Because I know we did meet many years ago when you did Dirty Raver for Rennie Pilgrim's label TCR. And for those who don't know, Rennie Pilgrim was 1/4 of Rhythm Section way back in the day with LSD. Yeah. Always remember the name. Nick and Rich. Nick, Rich, Roy, and Rennie for Rhythm Section, was it?
Yeah, I didn't really meet Rhythm Section. I may have seen him at a few gigs, but I obviously got to know Rennie really well when he was running TCR.
Yeah.
What do you want to know about the?
So with production, so obviously a huge, a great amount of output that came from like kind of on the production house era.
Yeah.
And then Dirty Raver, which I think 2007. Right. So what's coming up?
So basically, the communication with production house had sort of broken down in the sort of late 90s. In terms of I just wanted to go my own way, do other stuff. I'd kind of obviously like a lot of people, they just got bored out of the scene, or they kind of hadn't found their niche that they wanted to sort of stick with. And I sort of fell into the drum and bass. I kind of loved a lot of the drum and bass I was hearing, a lot of the Ed Rush optical stuff, and I kind of put out a couple of tunes. Which actually came out in the States through a guy called DJ DB.
Okay.
And I sort of done that for a couple of years before the sort of Dirty Raver thing. It'd been about sort of 10 years then, I think. So, 2002, 2003. Yeah. So I felt like it was just sort of homage to sort of, making a track like that, but kind of just sort of taking the piss out of itself. Sort of.
It was, it was a fun tune and very different. It stood out instantly, and I think the video was great as well. Yeah. And you were behind the video as well.
Yeah. Then that's also when I started cutting my teeth on video editing software and that kind of stuff. But back then it was all blowing up. Final Cut Pro had just come out, and I'd done a few bits for Electronic Arts. Few drum and bass bits, and they'd kind of sent me some stuff to cut to trailers to, which is when I then started to see what was going on video editing wise, and then I'd already clicked, okay, well, go and shoot something, feed it into this, and we got video, and then I kind of just felt 2 feet into video straight on from then on, and the kind of the productions music wise had taken a sort of that back burner, and I guess that's when I then slowed down and then sort of started to carve out a different career for myself. And then years later, I moved to Dubai. Yeah. So, got married and had a kid, and kind of just, and here I am today talking about it.
So what about? Great story. End of show. There you go. What Is there any temptation to get back in the studio?
Oh yeah, all the time. We are constantly, me and Floyd, talking all the time about new techniques, new equipment, trying to sort of, the point. I think the thing is that I think right now is a good place or a good time to sort of get back into stuff. I think a few years ago, you're always still trying to figure out what scene are you trying to adhere to? Is it just again, when I done Dirty Raver, that was just more of it was just more of a laugh. It was just kind of like
fun
I just
record.
wanted to, and again, I used old bits of kit on that S1000 and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to sort of go back in. I'm a big fan of kind of the old school stuff, so I like the hardware, and I'd love to go back in and kind of produce them as they were. But it was, trying to go back into that headspace is quite difficult. So I guess I'd like to go back in and do something as authentic as possible.
Nice. Yeah, like
then,
that. Yeah.
Like almost sort of from 90 to 92.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there'd be a lot of happy people out there that were they're hearing that.
I mean, I look at it through their eyes as well. I'm a fan like them. I'd like to, and I'm not hearing a lot of tunes that are kind of hitting that sort of vibe as far as sort of that just the kind of feel, the production, and the beats. And they don't have to be complicated. Sometimes it is just a couple of break beats mashed together and a good bass line, a good melody, and a hook. And those four elements are kind of pretty much what it is, and I can listen to that all day.
Well, I always kind of get inspired when you hear about oh God, who was that? This guy did a remix. I can't remember it. Azido DeBass, Doom's Night. And he said he did that in 4 hours. Like he said, he just got the sound, did the thing, and it was done. And he just hit all those right sounds at the right time. There wasn't 2 weeks spending for the right bass line or whatever. It just went bang, bang, bang. Oh, cool. So break for lunch, guys. See you later. There was also another great thing. Sean from Too Bad Mice. There's this kind of lost dub plate that they'd kind of been going around for years. There's a YouTube video of it. And Sean had found the old floppy disk for it. He then went out and bought every piece of equipment on eBay that he had in his studio at the time, so he could recreate his studio. In goes the floppy disk. Ba-da! Done it. They've now got like a full master of this lost tune that I'm hoping they're going to. Well, we'll go through all that effort just to go, great, sell all the gear and away we go. But, I think a lot of producers are looking back to that kind of hardware side. The software, you can get very lost in it. Again, I'm not a producer, so I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about. But, with that hardware, again, it's that kind of sound. It's not just the samples and the sounds within it, but it's the sound that it produces as well. And that's the key thing.
Also, a lot of the sound, again, came from vinyl. So, I mean, breaks, a lot of the drums. We'd use minimal kits. We'd use like maybe a bass drum or a snare drum from kits that would come on within the sample, but a lot of it came from vinyl pretty much. A lot of the sounds, I guess, we would sample a lot of synths as well, and they would take on their own sound within that particular sampler. But a lot of people don't do that these days. I think they work with presets, kits that are already in there because they've got too much there. So you just straight away you sort of jam and that's it, and you kind of want to build out into something, and you don't search, which is what I think we used to do a lot back then. Is like,
the art crate digging.
Even Ecstatic, that was what that was about. Russell bringing in a record one morning, and then next minute we were making Ecstatic with, a day later we were like, then by the end of the week it was mixed and done.
It was the whole bloody EP, wasn't it?
4 tracks.
So Facebook user says, release them all again on vinyl and I'll buy them again. And I'm going to second that as well. There's to go kind of a little bit back. I've never seen that before. Obviously, there's some privacy things going on. There's been, over the last couple of years, there's been a huge kind of remastering, repressing of a lot of kind of classics that are out there. Suburban Bass did, I think, 6-part release for Record Store Day last year. Reinforced have done a few, but a lot of the smaller labels. Then you've kind of got like MPS, Robin Allison, those guys that are sourcing the original dance, getting them all redone. There's another one, Dave, who does, Dave exclusively does retro or 92 records, so there's people out there are doing that, and I know because I've basically bought all of them. So what's your kind of thoughts behind the sort of production house back catalogue?
Well, we did do a little back catalogue via Drum and Bass Arena, but that was all digital, and that ran for a short while. But all the people you've mentioned, I've had quite a few people approach me.
Yeah.
As far as you know, and like I've said to most of them, yep, definitely be up for it. But kind of my criteria at the moment, it would be to be able to sort of do it coinciding with new music as well.
I think we spoke about this in fact,
yes,
that was my
did,
introduction to you, wasn't it? Many.
Yeah.
God, that probably would have been 2011, 2012. So yeah.
Yeah.
And
you know, it's one of those things where it would be good to do it, but alongside, you know, new music as well.
Yeah.
So you know, so even as a fan, you know, you're getting like a good something that's worthwhile in a lot of ways.
Do you know what I mean? I think actually there's a huge value in I wouldn't say a huge market, but there's a very dedicated market that people that just, you know, want the original pressing.
Absolutely.
You know, for sure. You know, people are doing sort of 200, 300, 500 runs and selling out. Once they're gone type attitude.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, a lot of producers that are big now, you know, a lot of them kind of cite, you know, oh, my older brother used to listen to Ray's music. That's what first kind of got me into it. You know, you look at someone like kind of Paul Wolford, huge house DJ, and his alias is Special Request. I mean, that stuff is like, you know, that's basically jungle at like kind of house tempo, and has done some amazing stuff. And you look at someone like Eats Everything, again, was kind of, you know, is still huge in the house scene. I think someone saw, his agent or something saw an interview he did in a magazine saying like, used to listen to LSD tapes when he was growing up. Next thing you know, they got in touch with LSD. They're doing a back-to-back at Glastonbury on the Arcadia stage. You know, there are so many kind of, you know, direct links into kind of today's kind of, you know, hot producers. I don't think you'd have any problem at all in, you know, you find the right person who's into the right record from production house.
Well, the thing is as well, it's nice to also know that, like, you know, our music, and when I say our music, I'm talking like everyone within the scene that was making hardcore and jungle, have influenced so many people. You know, I mean, even when you look at people that are in the charts and stuff as well, you can hear the influence of, you know, underground artists. You know what I mean? Underground scenes. And it's kind of nice to know that you've sort of been a part of that as well. But, you know, going back to putting stuff out on vinyl, we would very much love to definitely do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, all right, watch this space. Rishi says, any chance of any unreleased tunes being released from 92 or 93?
I've been asked this quite a lot of times, and it's quite a simple answer. No,
they're all out there.
Well, no, and also because of that, it's because of the system that you had. One, everything that we done for Production House was released. So we didn't really have any hidden tracks. Stuff that probably didn't make it to Production House, we had like we had quite a few other sub labels as well. So we put all the stuff out on that. You know what I mean? So
and everything else was just unfinished.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. I'm a bit sad about that answer as well.
Everyone's looking for that hidden gem. You know what I mean? It's like, well, yeah, that's got the real 92 vibe to it, but no one's ever heard it before. Sorry, guys.
So Benjamin Ryan says, have you got any spare copies of your album? I think you might need to expand on that one a little bit, mate. Andrew Sinclair says, Jay, I've always wanted to know how Acen dealt with the situation of sampling and lawyers. Was he sued? By who? And what was the end result?
all of that and above. That's I didn't. The clip. I mean, short answer to that is I didn't have to deal with it. That's the whole point.
I haven't caught him, yeah?
I actually thanked George Harrison at a Music Week Awards. I didn't go down too well. So they sort of like. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't. You know, I just made the tunes, and then it was like, okay. Nowadays, there is a big thing on sampling, and it was kind of I don't know what the word is, but I mean, basically back then nobody cared. It was almost like a new thing. I mean, we came from the hip hop days, where
in some ways kind of helped the law the way.
Yeah.
We in some ways have probably helped the law in the way that it is now, as far as sampling is concerned, because it was never an issue before, but because we were doing it in an abundance, we had lawyers working overtime.
Well, Raymond had a story, didn't he, about the?
I was telling Acen earlier on before we started the interview. Some years back, after the label, we'd stopped working for the label. I was working for this courier company, and I was delivering some letters to this solicitors, Park Street in Camden. And it turned out that these guys were the lawyers for George Harrison. and the guy
awkward.
And the guy in the office actually showed me the stampers for for Close Your Eyes Part 2, which had the Here Comes the Sun, because he owned that sample, and they did. To be honest, we have to give them credit. We'd sold a lot of records.
Yeah.
They put an injunction out, so we weren't allowed to sell anymore. They took the stampers back.
I was going to send a quick shout out to Aston Harvey, locked on. Big up yourself, Aston, out to the Freestylers and a Blaps Posse, original back in the day.
Big up yourself. There is a story about Trip to the Moon, though.
Yeah, go for it.
So the first 2 mixes that I'd done, the part 1 and part 2, had the original samples in them. Right?
Okay.
And there's a few test presses out there,
Yeah.
a few white labels. I've got a few, you probably got a few.
I'll have one.
And there was a couple of other mixes that we had to do without the sample, where we had to recreate it ourselves using.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, and there is one thing on YouTube out there if you search for it. I don't know how they've got that, but there was a couple of test presses of that went out, and somebody somehow picked that up, or it came. I was on the radio, so they recorded it off the radio. So Steve Jackson played that mix, and then we had to. They really shut us down to the point where we had to recreate the sample before the release.
Yeah.
So I think, that there was a difficult time there where that's when I thought I wasn't sure if it was going to get released.
Yeah.
It made so much traction that it was out there, and it was kind of like, that's it. It's not going to happen because EMI. But they said, look, we can recreate the sample, and that's when we got Phil had organised a small orchestra to recreate the John Barry samples. So that's how we dealt with those.
Yeah.
Basically.
All right. Just trying to work out where that. Oh, it's your phone. Do you know what? That was driving me mad. I was like, I'm sure I'm not playing that. My ringtone is like Valley of the Shadows, Origin Unknown, and it's been for 10 years. And every time I hear it in the club or wherever, I'm like checking my phone. Okay, so we have got some more questions here. Loving the interview. Age-old question: you playing a set? MCs, yes or no? So basically, if you're playing a DJ set, MC yes or MC no? I mean, I think we pretty much answered that because you brought the MC along with you. So the answer is yes to that one. I mean, personally, not that you've asked me the question, but a good host is necessary to hype the crowd. A crowd hyper. That's what we need. The bitty. Nah, not into that at all. Just you need someone. And normally, no.
I thought you were going to start chatting.
No. Give me 2 marks. I'll go.
That's hilarious.
Question 2: do you? I should probably read these before reading them out loud. I don't know. Question 2:
Yes, definitely.
you're having a mix on a choice of equipment. Do you go for vinyl or digital?
If we're doing what, sorry?
If you're doing a DJ mix, do you prefer vinyl or digital?
For me, it's always vinyl, but then, I
Well,
wouldn't say no to digital.
Yeah.
Well, I don't DJ, so it doesn't make any difference to me. Terry actually, on the other hand, does DJ. Yeah, well, Raymond would know. For Terry, it's definitely vinyl. For me, if I did DJ, I'd be cool with USB sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. There's a lot of Sood-related questions that are popping up. As in, sample and being sued questions. Someone's asking about when Exodus, When the Lion Awakes. I think about 3 people just asked about that tune as well.
Didn't have no problems with that.
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Okay. There you go.
No problems whatsoever.
Yeah, they might have done some stuff behind the scenes that we didn't know about.
No.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I think
Who knows?
I
they
know.
were comfortable the way we used the sample. We never got any flack for that.
Okay, there's a few random questions. Right, any more questions you chuck them in? We've only got them for about another 17 minutes. Okay, what is the best hardware or program or even app you would call a strong buy, mainly to Acen? That question. So I think that's basically any technology. What would you recommend? There you go.
Is it Reason?
No, it's whatever you can
What? Yeah, but they're asking what app, right? Right.
It's app or technology. I think it was kind of app-based. What is the best hardware or program or even app you will call a strong buy, and that's mainly to Acen?
I mean, okay, there's a few different answers here, but basically I love Propellerhead's Reason. So that on a laptop is pretty much all you need to make pretty much anything. A lot of people go for Ableton, that's fine as well, but I prefer Reason. Reason, the latest version of Reason anyway. In terms of hardware with software, the new Machine Mark III is a great tool.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, and beyond that, just hardware, it's all about the MPC X, MPC Live, the new MPCs that have come out.
That's caused quite a storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is basically, that would be my weapon of choice.
Yeah.
And back in the day, that was pretty much what we had.
Choice.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if Floyd wants to. Floyd is also pretty vocal about gear. So.
Well, I mean, as far as gear's concerned, it's basically whatever you can work with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, just because someone's using Logic, you may not actually get on with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You find that, you know, Reason works better for you, or Fruity Loops or something like that. You know, so it's more about whatever you can use to get an end product quickly. That's what it's about. You know what I mean?
Cool. All right. Floyd, I'm going to get you to pick your next song next, because we asked Floyd to bring a few tunes in that we can have a little listen to that you can kind of introduce. Are they yours ones, theirs? Yeah.
Yeah.
All
I mean, these are more ones that were either a bit more rare, or came out on Brutal, or just weren't sort of, you know, didn't have as much a focus on them at the time.
Well, I reckon we'll get about 3 in to the end of the show. So if you want to pick your top 3,
I'm gonna make Raymond choose it.
All right, no, go for it, Raymond.
First one would be the beginning, Stingray.
Okay.
All right. Just
The bottom one.
before we do that, I want to ask you who's the superstitious one at Production House, because there wasn't a 13th release as far as I can see.
Yeah, we did. We skipped the number.
I
Do you remember?
didn't even know that. Hold on. I'm going to find some new history here.
I'll be honest, I cannot recall the reason, the conversation that we had, but I know that it was definitely a conscious decision to not have a PNTO 13.
Wow.
You'll notice it goes from 12 and then it goes straight to 14.
I never even knew that. I never knew that.
Sorry.
I've learned something new.
I would love to be given, but I don't want to lie to you on. I cannot recall, and it was a long time ago. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can barely remember last weekend, mate. So to try and drill back to,
it was a blur, really.
Yeah.
A lot of that. I mean, but
We could actually start some mad rumours now. Do you know what I mean? I can actually say that I've actually got the track.
I got the masters.
It's an exclusive track and that no one's ever going to hear again. No, I'm only joking, by the way. I'm only joking.
It's under his couch. That's where you put it. That's where it
you're
stayed.
going to start a riot online now. Watch and see. They'll never let that go. There is a PNTO 13 somewhere.
Well, I saw there was also something about apparently there wasn't a PNT 55, which was, according to Discogs, there was something going on there. But we're going to have a little look at that.
Yeah.
But first of all, Raymond, can you introduce your selection here for me, please, mate?
So right off the bat, Jay Cunningham's going to play you The Beginning. It was on the Stingray label way back. Well, yeah, I kind of brought Anti-Chaos into the fold.
All right, so that was the beginning and Stingray, and Raymond's just going to fill us in a little bit more on what's going on, because there's a good story that we want to share here.
So part and parcel of what we were doing at the label, we were making, track after track after track. Some, as I was saying earlier, some of the tracks were a little bit obscure, so they weren't necessarily suited to go onto the production house label as it was. So the boys came, myself, we kind of sat down and we thought about bringing other labels that could substitute the production house label and release these tracks under those names.
Because I suppose at this point you've got the infrastructure there for kind of mastering, pressing, getting them out there. The machine's there.
Yeah. So rather than throw them out as white labels, we created specific labels for these. Brutal was one of them. You just mentioned this one, Floyd. FZ, Stingray, which we just played the beginning, and Floyd's just chosen this track, Life Can Begin, Anti-Chaos. Anti-Chaos were a group of guys. And he's making these tracks in his bedroom, and he's sending cassettes to production house.
Yeah.
And one of them it stood out, so we brought him down to the studio. I'm trying to remember. It was way out in the sticks.
Yeah.
But this guy was really talented, and
I'm sure I was in the studio with him.
yeah. So we sit him alongside Floyd and Terry and some of the other guys, and they're sharing the ideas, and eventually we came up with a series of tracks. He even did that. They ended up doing that show with us, the X, at Brixton Academy. Do you remember? It was some big charity thing.
Yeah.
It was broadcast all over I think there were 4 different locations. One in Paris.
Yeah.
One in London. There was one in New York, etc. So. And he was on stage with us, but a brilliant little producer.
Yeah.
And like you were talking about earlier, this is the feed coming from all the different angles of people that love production house, but they were sending us their demos. Yeah. And we did listen to quite a few of the stuff that was coming in. It was a lot to go through, but part of our schedule was listening to this stuff, trying to find the Acens that we knew were out there.
Yeah. All right, so the next tune we're going to who wants to introduce this the next tune?
Well, this is the same guy that Raymond was talking about. This is Anti-Chaos.
And Life Can Begin.
Life Can Begin,
So this is one that fell into that same kind of camp, it wasn't quite sort of fitting or time-wise for
and this track probably didn't get the focus on it that a lot of the other stuff did, but it was a good little tune.
Yeah. All right, well, let's have a little listen. So this is Life Can Begin by Anti-Chaos. Right, so we're going to play the last tune. Big tune. Nino, I know Nino was going to come down today. Unfortunately, couldn't make it. I'm not speaking to him now. That's it. It's done. So Nino the Gun, of course, massive tune from Production House. I know. Raymond's going to remember the catalogue number of this one. I put it in all my notes. I'm meticulous. I do the artwork. I've got the label, everything. I've got the most insanely organised record digital collection. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I know you're thinking just
PNTL 41 guys.
Who's got the time to do this stuff? Apparently I do.
When you understand even like my sampling library as well,
yeah,
I'm quite anal about that as well.
I've got thousands of tunes. I need to be able to access them, find them like that. Yeah, it goes a lot deeper than that. I
think yours is verging on obsession. I think.
Oh, that's just the surface. Everything gets tagged with like specific words as well. Honestly, mate, yeah, inside here.
It looks good though. Do you know what I mean? A nice, pretty picture as well.
Well, I do the artwork, and then literally I go to every digital release I got. I go to Discogs, and I'll get the artwork. I put on there because I still like that, flicking through the record box kind of feel to it. I had quite. I've said this a few times. I had quite a dyslexic approach to playing records because I never looked at the label, never read it. Actually, I just knew the colours and the shapes and the patterns. It's like, that's the one with the blah blah sample or whatever, and pull that out. It was only when I discovered Discogs that's when my mind went truly mental because I went completely the other way. Yeah. Once I discovered Discogs, I was like, so that guy was house crew. Okay, so he was also in Brothers Grimm, and he was also this, and he also ran the, and before you start following this trail, and again, this goes back to me saying about back then, Mix Mag, DJ Mag music, whatever. None of these covered it, so no one knew anything unless you knew someone from the scene. Yeah. As a raver that just went out raving all weekend long, sat at home or in a mate's car smoking God knows what, listening to all the pirates. That's all I did for like years and years until get out there. So once you get this information, you're like,
you embrace it.
Yeah.
Anally.
Yeah. All right. So listen, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming down. It's an absolute pleasure to have you down. Sorry, absolute pleasure, and thank you very much. I know you guys have travelled far, so listen, I can't thank you enough for coming down, mate. It's been a great pleasure for all of you. Some great stories, great insight into the history.
Been fun.
And we'll have to do it again. And next time we'll get Nino down. We'll get him to play a few tunes, and we'll go on it. All right. So I'm going to leave you last minute or so with Nino the Gun, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. But actually not next week, I'm going to Greece. Week after. All right.